True valor isn't found in the sunlight. It glows in the flickering neon of the city's most dangerous and forgotten corners. We tell the stories of those who stood tall when the world told them to bow down. Hit subscribe now and find your own strength in the night. When they told me my brother didn't make it, I was standing in the cereal aisle at a Kroger in Fayetteville, North Carolina, holding a box of Cheerios like it was the most important decision I'd ever make. It wasn't. I dropped it on the floor and walked out without buying anything. Drove home. Sat in the parking lot of my apartment complex for 45 minutes before I could make my legs work again. My brother Finn was 26 years old. He coached youth basketball at the YMCA on Tuesday nights. He called our mom every Sunday morning without fail, even when he was overseas, even when the connection was garbage and she could only hear every third word. He had this thing where he'd leave sticky notes on your bathroom mirror when he visited. Little dumb jokes, bad puns, stuff that made you groan and smile at the same time. Last one he left me, he said, "Why did the soldier go to art school? Because he wanted to draw fire." He thought that was hilarious. Finn was 26, worked nights at a distribution warehouse outside of Raleigh to pay off his student loans, and was shot twice in the chest in the parking lot of a Waffle House at 2014 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. I knew better, and it took me 14 months to prove it. My name is Coul. I'm 31 years old. I did 8 years with the 75th Ranger Regiment before a knee injury ended my contract. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. I'm not telling you this to impress you. I'm telling you because it matters for what comes next. Because the people who killed my brother had no idea who they were leaving behind. Finn and I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. Single mom, small house, big on Sunday church, and bigger on keeping your word. Our dad left when Finn was 4, which meant I became his dad in all the ways that counted. Taught him to ride a bike in the parking lot of the First Baptist Church on a Saturday morning, helped him with his college essays when I was already stationed overseas, read penning them in the DFAC and emailing them back with comments in the margins. He got into NC State. Full ride, academic scholarship. I cried in the bathroom of a fob in Kandahar and told nobody. So when the detective, a heavyset guy named Greer, smelled like cigarettes and coffee, kept clicking his pen, when he sat across from me in that Waffle House parking lot at 4 a.m. and used the words robbery gone wrong, something went quiet in me. Not the grief. The grief was loud. Something else went quiet. His wallet was still in his pocket, I said. Detective Greer clicked his pen. Sometimes they panic. Sometimes the Vic fights back and... Did he have defensive wounds? Greer looked at me for a second. You law enforcement, no. Military? I didn't answer. He sighed and closed his notepad. Look, we're treating this as a priority. I'll be in touch. He was not in touch. 3 weeks passed. I called the department 4 times. Left messages with 2 different officers. Got 1 call back from a junior detective who told me the case was active and ongoing, in a tone that meant it was neither. I drove back to Fayetteville, sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, started from the beginning. Finn had texted me 9 days before he died. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. We texted constantly, random stuff, links to videos, trash talk about his Hornets and my Panthers. But going back through our thread at 1 a.m. with a cup of cold coffee, I found it. Hey, you know anything about a guy named Hargrove? Like what to do if someone's connected. I'd responded, connected how? Like mob stuff will. He sent back, never mind, it's nothing. Talk Sunday. We talked Sunday. He didn't bring it up. I didn't push. I spent 3 days trying to figure out who Hargrove was. Greenville Hargroves, Raleigh Hargroves, anyone in the distribution and logistics world near the warehouse where Finn worked. On the 4th day, I found him. Denton Hargrove, 53 years old, listed as a logistics consultant, but his actual business, from what I could piece together through incorporation filings and a couple of local news mentions, was a network of regional distribution centers that moved freight through the Carolinas and into Virginia. On paper, it looked legitimate, the kind of thing nobody looks at twice. But Finn had looked at it. I don't know exactly what he found. I know what I eventually pieced together, that Hargrove was using 3 of those distribution centers to move fentanyl along the I-85 corridor. I know that Finn, working the night shift, had likely seen something he wasn't supposed to see. And I know that 2 weeks after he texted me that name, he was dead in a Waffle House parking lot with his wallet still in his pocket. The question was why Detective Greer wasn't interested. That answer took another 6 weeks. Greer's brother-in-law was on Hargrove's payroll, not listed anywhere, not in any filing. I found it through a Facebook photo. A family barbecue, July 4th, 2 years back. Greer in a lawn chair, grinning, and in the background, clear as anything, a man I'd already spent weeks studying. Denton Hargrove, standing at the grill like it was his backyard. It might have been. I sat with that photo for a long time. Here's the thing they don't tell you about losing someone you love to violence. The grief doesn't go anywhere while you're working. It doesn't sit in a corner and wait politely. It's there when you're pulling phone records. It's there when you're cross-referencing shift schedules. It's there at 3 a.m. when you're staring at a whiteboard you've taped to your living room wall like some guy in a movie. And you catch yourself thinking Finn would make fun of this so hard right now. He'd say something like, "Bro, you look like you're trying to solve the Da Vinci Code in a Bojangles uniform." I'd give anything to hear him say that. I kept working. The warehouse where Finn worked ran 3 shifts. Night shift was light, maybe 12, 15 people, plus supervisors. I got a job there. Took me a week to get hired. They weren't picky about night shift workers. I told them I was between contracts and needed something steady. Not entirely untrue. I spent 3 weeks on the floor. Learned the layout. Learned the schedules. Watched the loading dock on the north end of the building. Dock 7, specifically, where every Thursday night between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., 2 unmarked trucks came in that weren't on any manifest I could find. The guys who unloaded Dock 7 were not regular warehouse employees. They showed up in their own vehicles, worked fast, left fast. Nobody on the floor said anything about them. The shift supervisor, a nervous guy who chewed his thumbnail down to nothing, always found reasons to send people to the south end of the building on Thursday nights. On my 4th Thursday there, I positioned myself near the break room, which had a sight line to Dock 7 through a gap in the shelving. Took photos on a phone I'd bought cash from a Walmart in Durham. I had what I needed, but I didn't go to Greer. I went over him. The FBI field office in Charlotte is on West Trade Street, a gray building that blends into the block so well you'd drive past it 10 times and not notice it. I walked in on a Thursday morning with a folder and asked to speak with someone in the organized crime unit. The woman at the front desk looked at me like I'd asked to speak with Santa Claus. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have photographs of a controlled substances distribution operation, a timeline of deliveries going back 6 weeks, and a connection between one of your county detectives and the man running it. I'll wait." I waited 2 hours and 40 minutes. Then a man in a blue suit came out and told me his name was Agent Farrow and asked me to follow him. We talked for 3 hours. I laid everything on the table, the text from Finn, the Hargrove connection, the Dock 7 operation, the Facebook photo of Greer and Hargrove at that barbecue. Farrell took notes and said very little, which is exactly what good investigators do. At the end, he slid my folder back across the table and said they'd be in contact. I went home and didn't sleep. They called me 11 days later. What happened after that is the part I can only tell you pieces of, because some of it is still tied up in proceedings I'm not supposed to discuss in detail. What I can tell you is this. Denton Hargrove was arrested on a Thursday morning. Appropriate, I thought, outside a Cracker Barrel in Concord, North Carolina, where he apparently had breakfast every week. 18 counts. Federal. The kind of charges that don't leave a lot of daylight between the indictment and the rest of your life behind bars. Detective Greer was placed on administrative leave pending an internal affairs investigation. Last I heard, that investigation had found enough to refer to the DA's office. His brother-in-law took a plea deal that required cooperation. 4 other men connected to the Dock 7 operation were arrested within 60 days. And the 2 men who shot Finn, Hargrove's guys, sent to silence a warehouse worker who'd asked a question he shouldn't have, or indicted for first-degree murder in October of last year. Both of them. The trial is scheduled for this spring. I drove down to Raleigh the day the arrest warrants were executed, sat in my truck outside the courthouse and let myself feel it for the first time in 14 months. Not the satisfaction. There wasn't much satisfaction. Just the grief, finally, without the pressure of doing something about it. It came out ugly and loud, and I was glad I was alone. Then I called my mom. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Finn would have thought you were crazy. He would have made a whiteboard joke," I said. She laughed. First time I'd heard her laugh in over a year. It sounded like something coming back. There's something I've thought about a lot since this ended, or since this part of it ended anyway, because nothing like this really ends. You just find a different place to carry it. My brother asked me a question 9 days before he died. He asked it carefully, almost casually, because that was Finn. He never wanted to worry anyone. And I gave him a joke answer. And then on Sunday he didn't bring it up, and I didn't push, and I have replayed that Sunday call probably 1,000 times. What I would have asked, what he might have told me, whether any of it would have mattered. I don't know. I'll never know. What I know is that he saw something wrong and he didn't look away. That was Finn. He coached basketball on Tuesday nights at the Y because he said kids needed someone to show up for them consistently, and he wanted to be that person. He called Mom on Sundays. He left sticky notes on bathroom mirrors. He saw something in that warehouse and he didn't walk past it. It cost him everything. I don't think he'd want me to say it was worth it. He wasn't that kind of righteous. He'd probably just shrug and say something goofy and change the subject before things got too heavy. But I think he'd be glad it didn't stay buried. A few months ago, I started connecting with other families in North Carolina who'd lost someone to fentanyl trafficking. Not just the users, but the people in the supply chain who'd become collateral damage when they got too close to something. There are more of them than you'd think. A woman whose husband was a trucker who stumbled onto a pickup arrangement and reported it to his dispatcher. Wrong dispatcher. A man whose teenage son worked at a storage facility and overheard a conversation he shouldn't have. We started meeting once a month. Nothing formal. Just coffee, a church rec room in Cary that a pastor friend lets us use, folding chairs. We share what we know. We share who to call. We share what worked and what didn't when the local department wasn't interested. I called it the thread, because that's what it is. You pull one end and you start to see how it's all connected. And because that's what Finn did, he pulled a thread. I'm still pulling. Some Thursdays when I'm driving to Cary for the meeting, I think about him, not the grief version of him, not the 2 a.m. in the Kroger parking lot version. Just Finn, being annoying, being kind, leaving dumb jokes on mirrors. I look at the sky sometimes when I'm getting out of the truck. I don't say anything out loud. I don't have to. He knows. People ask me sometimes if it was worth it. The 14 months, the night shift job, the whiteboard on my living room wall, the 2-hour, 40-minute wait in a gray federal building lobby, holding a folder that could have gotten me killed if the wrong person had seen me walk in. Was it worth it? I never know how to answer that, because worth it implies some kind of exchange, like I gave something and got something back of equal value. That's not what happened. Finn is still gone. No arrest, no federal indictment, no courtroom brings a person back. I know that. I knew it the whole time I was working. But here's what I've come to understand, slowly. The way you understand anything that costs you. Cause and consequence are not the same thing as fairness. Finn saw something wrong and he didn't walk past it. That choice had a consequence he couldn't have predicted, and it was brutal and it was final, and I would give everything I own to rewind it. But the choice itself, the instinct to not look away, that came from who he was. You don't build that overnight. That's a person who spent 26 years deciding, in small ways and large, to give a damn about things that didn't directly affect him. Tuesday night basketball practice. Sunday calls to Mom. A sticky note on a mirror. So someone's morning starts with a laugh. He pulled the thread because that was the only thing a person like him could do. And Hargrove, Denton Hargrove, who had breakfast at a Cracker Barrel every Thursday like a man with nothing on his conscience, he built something on the assumption that people like Finn could be erased quietly and the world would move on. That's not arrogance. That's a calculation. He'd probably made it many times before and been right. The calculation failed this time, not because the universe corrected itself, but because the specific person Finn happened to be related to refused to let it stand. That's all it was. One variable he didn't account for. I'm not a hero in this story. I want to be clear about that. I had training that most people don't have, and I had time and anger and a need to do something with my hands instead of just drowning. I was lucky that Agent Farah was the kind of man who listened. I was lucky the photos were clear. 100 things could have gone differently. What I want people to take from this, if they take anything, is not that you need a ranger in the family to get justice. It's that Finn's instinct to not look away mattered. It mattered even when it cost him everything. The record he started, without knowing he was starting one, became the thread I pulled. His courage, quiet and ordinary and not dramatic at all, was the actual beginning of everything that followed. I think about that a lot when I drive to Cary on Thursday nights. The people in those folding chairs, they're not soldiers. They're a trucking widow and a father who lost a teenager and a retired school teacher who's trying to understand what happened to her nephew. None of them asked for any of this. All of them kept going anyway. That's the thing about people who do what's right, even when it costs them. They rarely get to see what it sets in motion. Finn didn't. But I get to. And I carry that like it means something, because it does.